She's got a dingo in the car with her. I am very much looking forward to finishing it. This one did just come out this year, I think. What is up, guys? Welcome back to another video. So today we are doing the mid-year freakout tag. I'm not a big tag gal. This is literally the only other tag that I've done on my channel. I just did it the same one but last year. But I like this tag because it kind of lets you check in halfway through the year and see how your reading is going. I am at, I think, 33, 34, 35 books so far this year. I've been using Storygraph to keep track of everything, not an ad for them. I just love them. There's just something about the Storygraph interface, searching up a book, adding your little review. You could add like content warnings, keywords, all sorts of things when you go in to do a review. I don't know, I just really like it. All the little, like the pie charts and stuff that you can do at the end of the month. I don't know, it's just a really fun way of keeping track of everything. It gives you a little, like, whatever you call it, like a line graph of like how many pages you've read so far in the year. So I will put the questions. Oh, what are you doing, buddy? Huh? Okay. So I will put the questions to this tag in the description box. Hey, excuse you. Guillermo. Guess you can have it if you want. All right, so the first question, we got to start off with the best one, and that's the best book of 2023 so far. I have two that I'm going to say, even though I know best means like favorite, you're only supposed to pick one. I've got two that I can't really decide between, and one is fiction and one is nonfiction, so I figure I'm giving the best of each category. So for fiction, I've got Hernan Diaz's In the Distance. Really loved this. It is literally like a whole life story, basically. We start with Håkan or Håkan. You guys can correct me if you know how to pronounce that name. I believe he's from Sweden. But in the beginning, he gets separated from his brother. They're on their way to New York from Sweden. And yeah, they get separated, and the entire novel is essentially him trying to meet back up with his brother and all the things that happened to him along the way. It almost has kind of a Forrest Gump sort of vibe. It's sort of just him bumbling through life, stumbling upon different people, having these different experiences, even though he's got this grand plan of finding his brother. All the things that happen to him, the life that he lives along the way is essentially what this book is. Really beautiful, atmospheric landscape, like descriptions of the landscape, but I thought it was so beautiful. It says it was a finalist for a Pulitzer. It would totally have made sense to me if it won, because it is really that good. So if you like a book that focuses really intensely on one character and all the trials and tribulations that they go through, and you kind of see their life unfold, then this one you will probably like. And then for nonfiction, I've got Yeonmi Park's In Order to Live. Boyfriend and I read this a couple of months ago, I think, and I don't know how much literature there is out there from North Korean defectors. I would imagine it's all insane to read because the story, the life that she lived is just so crazy. Yeonmi Park was born and raised in North Korea. She escaped, I believe, when she was 13 with her mom. Needless to say, her journey is as insane as you can possibly imagine it to be. She gets sold into human trafficking. They don't realize that's what's happening. They just think that they're escaping. They eventually make it to Mongolia. The whole thing is just crazy. She was on the Sean Ryan show. I watched that podcast, and she really goes into some more details. It's interesting to see her explain about it, and then to see how far she's come, because she's now in America. There's only like 200 and some odd North Koreans who've defected and made it to America, so she is quite unique in that sense. She has an incredible story, so if you're a fan of memoirs, you're probably really gonna like this one. But like, trigger warnings for sure. I would go on my Storygraph and look up all the content warnings because it is pretty intense. Okay, next is best sequel so far. This did not come out in 2023. It came out last year in 2022. But I think it's the only sequel that I read this year. Did I even read this year? I just don't read a lot of series, so I haven't read a lot of sequels. But Hellbent by Leigh Bardugo is pretty epic, the whole series. I know it's supposed to be a trilogy, so she's got a third one coming out at some point. I don't know. I would love to have a career like hers. I like her whole, shutting herself off from the world, announcing on social media, like, bye, I'm gonna go write a novel, and then however many months later she comes with her next beast. So this is obviously the sequel to Ninth House, which I love, a good dark academia. That's one of my favorite genres. I think I may have liked the first one more just because The first of a series is always like special because you're introduced to the characters and getting to know them kind of for the first time and seeing like the dynamics and like how they, you know, react to each other. I am very much looking forward to finishing it. I'm normally not a big hardback gal, but this is just so pretty, the artwork in here, so had to buy the hardback. I also do have a reading vlog on this if you guys are interested, where I go into a little bit more detail and I give like a full review at the end, so I'll link that in the cards if you guys are interested. Next is the most anticipated release. I think it's out already. In fact, I know it will be out by the time that you watch this video. Augustina Bazterrica's 19 Claws and a Blackbird. She wrote Tender as the Flesh, which is one of my favorite, very disturbing horror novel that has to do with cannibalism. Very good, but very dark. If you have a strong stomach, it will help if you decide to read that one. But anyway, this is, I want to say, her first story collection, like short stories. There's 19 short stories, hence the title. I pre-ordered it a couple of weeks ago, so pretty excited for that one. Another one that I will mention, and I think it will also be out by the time that this video comes out, and that is a science fiction book called A Half-Built Garden. I think it's been out in hardback for a while, but I had to wait for the paperback. That one should be coming to me pretty soon as well. I want to say it's one of those like humanity is almost extinct and they're having to like rebuild somewhere new, I think. Next is the biggest surprise of 2023. So I read this one a couple of months ago, I think, and the only reason why it's a surprise is just because I was expecting something different. So that is Laura Jean McKay's The Animals in That Country. I think we were in Dallas, just for like a little weekend trip. We were in Interrobang Books, I believe, and there was another cover of this. It's really cool. It's like bright pink. And I didn't get that one because I hadn't heard anything about this. So I went online and then saw that this copy also existed, which is gorgeous. I love whatever you call this, holographic text. I love that. I liked it, but I was thinking it was going to be more from the perspective of the animals. So the whole thing is that they call it the zoo flu breaks out, and basically humans can now hear animals' thoughts. That's the whole premise. So I was hoping it was going to be a little bit more like inside the minds of the animals, hearing them talk and seeing them interact. I was thinking that's what this was going to be. It ended up not being. It's very much from the human protagonist perspective, and she's a grandma, and she is basically going across it takes place in Australia, so she's kind of going across the desert, I guess. I don't remember if she ends up like in the outback or not, but she's basically having to like almost cross the continent to go find her granddaughter who's been taken. I'm not going to say anything more. I don't want to ruin the plot, obviously. She's got a dingo in the car with her as her companion, and it's more about her addiction. So she's like suffering from alcoholism, and it's just kind of her trying to make her way to her granddaughter, but working through her own demons. And we don't really get a lot from the animals or about the animals, so I was just expecting something a little bit different, but it's still worth a read. But that was a surprise for that reason. Fave new author is the next question, and I have two. So Yeonmi Park is one of them, which I just talked about. We read this, and then we also read her second book, While Time Remains, which is more like a political science book and also very good. So she was a very fresh new voice. And then also Mary Oliver. So I just bought something from her. Now I know Mary Oliver has been writing for many decades, I think, but it's my first time reading her. I read her this year. I started with Upstream, which is a collection of essays. Really loved it. And then I recently ordered Dreamwork, I think, which is another one of her, except it's poetry, a poetry collection. I love the way she talks about nature. She talks about nature sort of being her temple. So I'm excited to get into her work. I know Devotions, that's another big one that I've seen at many a bookstore. They're not debut authors by any means. Well, Yeonmi Park kind of is, because she's like relatively new. Next question is newest fictional crush. This one's always a little bit tricky because I don't read like middle grade or romance or like a book that would lend itself to that kind of question. I said Darlington from Ninth House because I feel like I don't know, he just seems like the quintessential cool guy. He's kind of got a little bit of an ego, I guess, which can be really irritating in real life, but it's really fun reading about a character with that kind of personality in a book when you don't have to actually experience that kind of personality trait in real life. So I guess that's an easy one. Next question is a book that made you cry. And I think I said this in last year's tag video. None of them. I don't read a lot of sad books. She goes through a lot in this book, but she's so resilient, and the way that she writes about like needing to go on and just like the human spirit's willingness to survive. It doesn't make you sad, like it makes you look up to her in a way and inspires you. So even when I read really sad stuff, if it's like that where the author doesn't want you to like feel pity for them, then I don't really feel bad, so then I don't cry about it. I don't know. I'm definitely more moved by like a movie. I could cry at a movie or like a TV show. I guess maybe just because it's more like visual, and then you have like the music and it's all very cinematic, but at books it doesn't really happen. And then the next one is a book that made you happy. So the first one that I thought about when I saw this question was one that I read recently, which is Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer. So she talks about her background as a botanist or a biologist, I forget which, and then she kind of combines that background knowledge with indigenous wisdom. She belongs to the Potawatomi tribe. And so there was something about this that just felt, I don't know, it's like the perfect marriage between science and her giving us like information about nature and why it is the way it is. But then there's also a lot of memoir in here. She talks a lot about her kids. She's got 2 daughters. And so she's bringing in that like warmth of herself. And then obviously indigenous practices. This was just such a beautiful melding of all of those things that it made me very happy. It's not like a happy in the sense that it's like a rom-com or like a contemporary romance or something, but happy in a soul way, which is really, really refreshing. This one definitely made me happy. Next is most beautiful book. So I have 2 for this. Yes, these right here. So a more recent one that I bought for my reading a book from every country challenge that I started. This one will be for South Korea. Untold Night and Day by Bae Sua. But I love, like I was saying earlier, I love that like holographic font on there. I love the pink border, the light kind of slicing through her face. It's so simple, but it's so beautiful. So I love this one. And then sort of an honorable mention is People from My Neighborhood by Hiromi Kawakami. Read this one recently. Wasn't obsessed. I think I gave this like a 3 stars. It's so springy and amazing. So that's sort of a runner-up, I would say. And then the last question is a book that you want to read by the end of the year. So I definitely need to read the sequel to Vita Nostra, which I have. I went ahead and ordered it. But I'm kind of a mood reader, and I go kind of based on how the cover makes me feel. And so this is Vita Nostra Book 2, Assassin of Reality by the Dyachenkos, Marina and Sergei. So this is a translated book. It'll probably be again in my Reading Around the World challenge for Ukraine. But I think I'm going to wait until September, October, November, something like that, because it just looks, it's got that dark academia vibe to it. Vita Nostra is definitely up there for me with like Ninth House, The Secret History in terms of like dark academia. So I will definitely be reading this before the end of the year. I'm not totally sure when the 3rd one is due. This one did just come out this year, I think. So it's, I assume, going to be maybe next year when the 3rd one comes out. But I will be reading this one probably in the fall. And then another one that I'll mention sort of as a runner-up or an honorable mention is the Girl from the Other Side series, the manga series. I stopped reading at like volume 8 or 9. I don't remember why. Maybe the rest of the series wasn't published at the time. I'm not totally sure. But I went on eBay and found most of them. So I'm going to start over from book 1. And then when I finish them, and I don't even know how many volumes there are, I need to look that up, but when I finish them, I'm gonna watch the anime. Love the art style. It almost has like a dark academic vibe to it, even though that's totally not what the story's about. But it's a really beautiful, almost father-daughter kind of story. It's kind of difficult to explain, but it's a really cute story. And I will link the trailer to the anime below if you guys are interested in getting the vibe. Alright, so I think that is just about everything that I mentioned. Definitely want to know the best book you've read so far this year. And you guys have been so awesome giving me a lot of recommendations for books that were published in other countries, translated into English for my Reading Around the World challenge. But if you have any more, I would love to hear them. So let me know what your favorite book of the year has been so far. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.